Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Isaiah Rose. This is Ask Isaiah, and we are on the last day of the NBA, the first half of the NBA season. I don't want to say it's the last day of the NBA season, but we are reaching the NBA All-Star weekend point. This is the last game before February 20th when regular season action gets back underway. For the next couple of days, we're going to have great festivities around the city of Chicago. Obviously, it's going to be freezing cold, but nevertheless, the game itself is going to bring all of the luminaries out, all celebrities, all fans of all ages in support of this great game that we love. So when we get to this juncture of the NBA, obviously it's about 54 games in, so we're more than halfway through in terms of numbers wise, in terms of the number of games. But nevertheless, we have teams jockeying for position in terms of playoff seeding. You have teams that need the break, considering all the injuries that they might accumulate over an NBA season. So this time is really uh, a time to recharge for everyone involved. And as fans, we can really start to see how things are forming in terms of how playoff matchups might look and what particular players might need a breakout for the second half to really put their teams in position to make a championship run. So, with that said, we just want to really break down the trade deadline that passed last week in terms of what teams made key trades for those playoff runs and what teams might be preparing for the future, regardless of where their team is right now. Let's break down the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they're a year in transition after making five straight NBA Finals, winning three championships, and having arguably one of the greatest teams in the history of the league for a 5 year period. They dealt with a number of injuries in the NBA Finals and at the start of this season that really changed the trajectory of their season. And after losing Kevin Durant, they had to recalibrate what they already were. They went into the season with the hopes of utilizing Steph Curry at his apex individually, but also complementing him with D'Angelo Russell, who came off a breakout season with the New Jer- with the Brooklyn Nets. I was about to say the New Jersey Nets, but his breakout season got him a first appearance in the All-Star game for him in his first four seasons. He had an opportunity to really showcase himself, especially in the second half, leading the Nets to the playoffs. But in signing with the Warriors, he had an opportunity uh, prior to prior to Steph Curry's wrist injury to really play with Steph and really, you know, show that he can maximize his ability with a younger team, sort of like what he did with the Nets. But injuries being what they were, not only to Steph Curry, but to D'Angelo Russell and to Draymond Green, it kind of changed what the Warriors wanted to do for the 2019-2020 season. Um, they traded D'Angelo Russell to Minnesota for Andrew Wiggins, a player who, despite immense talent, was very underwhelming throughout his career in Minnesota. He's a player who's averaged over 20 a number of times, but many people have felt that despite his athletic prowess, he hasn't given his maximum effort every single night, and it shows on the court. And considering what Minnesota's talent level was, not just with Wiggins, but with Karl Anthony Towns, you would expect a team like Minnesota to be competing for playoff spots and arguably championships going into their primes, but it just didn't work out. So Minnesota had to move on from him. And when you trade Wiggins to Golden State, you get a top three protected pick in 2021, second round. Detroit also traded Andre Drummond to Cleveland. Andre Drummond to Cleveland for Brandon Knight, John Henson, and a 2023 second round pick. When you look at what Detroit has been over the last couple of years, they've been a dead stop. You got Blake Griffin last year. He had an all NBA caliber season. He made the third team in Detroit, actually made the playoffs, but to be quite honest with you, they had been going nowhere for a number of years. And Andre Drummond, while putting up spectacular rebounding numbers and being very durable, he hasn't really impacted Detroit to the level of their liking, and they have to rebuild. Blake Griffin, they're attached with that contract for the next couple of years, so they're gonna have to deal with that contract. And Blake Griffin, that arguably might be breaking down at this juncture in his career. He's out for the season. He had another knee surgery, so that's an issue that Detroit has to deal with. They had to move Andre Drummond, who probably will enter free agency in 2020. So you want to eliminate that headache of having to re-sign him. You let Drummond go to Cleveland, try to reassert himself and build some value for a team that might utilize a player of his style with the game changing the way that it does. Uh, Obviously, over a number of years, the big man has changed and he's evolved in ways that Drummond is kind of stuck. He's a great rebounding. He's a great rebounding big, and he throws his body around and utilizes it well in some respects, but he's not a great defender. And even though he does tend to put up points, it's very reliant on what a guard can provide for him. He can't get his own offense, or get his own offense effectively. And in doing so, it puts your team and it limits your team in a certain respect. So he's a player that he has to be utilized in a specific way for a specific team to really optimize who he is. Let's see what he can do over these next 28 games or so for Cleveland. They're not going anywhere, but if he can just stay healthy and showcase who he is, I'm sure a team that can utilize a big, especially if you're on the cusp of a championship, you might need a big that can just, go out and get you key rebounds, can throw a body around, utilize key fouls every now and then. You can use a player like Drummond, who's, like I said, very durable. He rebounds at a high rate, and if provided the right arsenal around him, he can get you a positive, 17 points on a consistent basis. But you shouldn't need his 17. If you're relying on his 17 on a consistent basis, it's not going to be very formidable for your team in a positive way. On Detroit over the last couple of years, he put up empty stats, but like I said, he's durable. He rebounds at a high level, and he's very young. He's only 27, 20 years old, so he should have some quality years left in him. The Hawks made some huge moves. Not only did the Hawks make moves, but the Hawks, Rockets, T-Wolves, and Nuggets executed a 14-12 player trade with many moving parts. So let's break this down in a number of ways. The Rockets move Clint Capella, the premier piece in the trade. Clint Capella was traded for Robert Covington, Jordan Bell, and a future second-round pick. Atlanta gets Clint Capella and Nene Hilario. The T-Wolves get Malik Beasley, Aaron Turner, Jared Vanderbilt, and Joncho Hernangomez, a 2020 protected first-round pick from ATL. Now, here's how you break it down. With the Atlanta Hawks getting Clint Capella's dealing with plantar fasciitis right now. And prior to the actual trade, he was sitting out a number of games for Houston. And they had already committed to going to a full-blown small ball lineup. So they had already had in their mind that they were moving on from Clint Capella weeks prior to actually making this trade. Dealing with a player of dealing for Clint Capella in the fashion that you do, you have a team in Atlanta that's very, very young. Clint Capella is only 25 years old, so he still has a number of years left in him. But the way Clint Capella plays, he's more of a pick and roll, alley-oop type of player. Pick and roll, catch lobs. He plays defense at times when he's very engaged, and he rebounds at a high rate. But the thing about Atlanta is they didn't have a big. There was reports that they might go after Andre Drummond, and they were trying to go after Steven Adams, but talks stalled very early in those conversations between the Oklahoma City Thunder. So Atlanta had to move on. And finding a team in Houston who wanted to move on from Capella, who has 2 years left on his contract, for Atlanta, they can utilize Capella to shore up their front line. It puts John Collins, who's a promising young power forward, in his natural position and playing the power forward. And you can utilize Trae Young, who's exceptional as a playmaker, a shooter, and he's becoming a well-rounded scorer at this junction in his career. He's only in year 2, but you utilize Trae Young in those pick and roll situations. You can utilize Capella with those lobs over the top. For Houston and getting Robert Covington, they needed another 3-and-D player. They do have PJ Tucker, but PJ Tucker was really their only formidable option defensively on the interior. With Robert Covington, he allows you to switch, which Houston loved to utilize over the last couple of years, especially with the small ball lineup. You can switch on for all 5 positions. Robert Covington is a versatile defender. He's an All NBA, All Defensive First Team performer. So he's right in their wheelhouse for what they need. And not only that, he's a quality 3-point shooter. So with the driving and attacking ability of James Harden and Russell Westbrook, especially Russell Westbrook, you can utilize that pressure to kick out to Covington, to Daniel House, to Ben McLemore, and Eric Gordon when he's healthy. Unfortunately, Gordon's been dealing with some knee injuries throughout this season, so he hasn't really been able to get in a consistent flow with Houston. But all things being considered, Houston should be able to capitalize on these particular matchups going forward. The issue will be, and there's already been some pushback in regards to how small their lineups have been at times, especially after Clint Capella's trade. The lineups that they roll out there on the floor sometimes, the tallest player is 6'5", 6'6". With that said, though, while many people might consider Houston being a liability on the boards, you have to consider too that the opposition has to adjust to how they perform offensively, and it's very difficult to guard on the perimeter all game, considering the way that Russell Westbrook and James Harden attack. You're going to have to adjust to their lineup and go small as well if you want to, have a shot in the game. So we'll see how that goes long term. But so far, since Houston has committed to the committed to the small ball lineup full time, they have gone 5-2 in the last 7 games. And getting rid of Nene Hilario is more or less a contract thing. You dump some money. Nene's not been really active over the last couple of years. I don't expect him to be really active for Atlanta. For the T-Wolves, they get Malik Beasley from Denver, getting Evan Turner from Atlanta. Evan Turner probably will be on the buyout market over the next couple of weeks. Evan Turner is a versatile player who can contribute in a variety of ways as a playmaker, a defender. He's not a good shooter, but he tends to, make plays offensively. So you can utilize him as a 6'7" player with a frame like that. You can, utilize him in a variety of matchups. He's a quality ball handler. I look at him like a poor man's Iguodala at times. No disrespect to Evan, but just in terms of how you utilize Evan at his apex, he's a player that can do a lot of things. Malik Beasley is a player who to me performed very well for Denver. It's just that Denver has so many guards that it was very, very difficult to utilize him in a quality fashion. With that said, though, Beasley is a defender. Beasley is a player who's willing to get after it. So Minnesota could use that. Joncho Hernangomez, he hasn't really rounded out into the player that he could potentially be just yet. But Minnesota is just trying to, put things in perspective. You got Karl-Anthony Towns, and now you have D'Angelo Russell. Let's see how that particular tandem can maximize each other. And if they can play to their potential, then you can find the proper pieces to build around them as a cohesive unit. And Minnesota could potentially be something going forward down the line. For the Nuggets, they get Gerald Green, a Rockets first-round pick, Noah Vonleh, Shabazz Napier, Keita Bates-Diop. Now, for Gerald Green was a great asset for Houston over the last couple of years. And to be quite honest with you, Gerald has been able to resurrect his career a number of times with a variety of teams. But Houston is where he really found a home, especially being from Houston. But in terms of being from Houston and really settling in with the Rockets over the last couple of years, he rounded out his game as a quality shooter Obviously, we know Gerald as an athlete and transcendent athlete in terms of just being able to dunk the basketball. But Gerald has become a quality 3-point shooter, and he comes with great energy. The thing about Gerald is he's coming off a foot injury in the preseason that really derailed his regular season. So there were talks that he'd be back late March, early April. So let's see how he recovers. He's going to a playoff team in Denver, so he's not in a bad situation. If Denver's able to utilize him for his shooting, they do have Will Barton, they do have uh, Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, so they do have perimeter players that can shoot already or quality shooters. You got Michael Porter Jr. rounding into shape as well, but for a team like Denver, you can never not have enough assets. So let's see how they are able to utilize Gerald Green. They upgrade at the point guard position as well, backup point guard, and for Jamal Murray, Shabazz is a quality backup. He's tough. He comes from UConn with championship pedigree. In the NBA, he's bounced around a bit, but he's a player who is consistent when he comes on the court, and he always has a quality attitude. So I think in Denver he should fit in. You get Noah Vonleh, who didn't really necessarily play to the level that that Minnesota might have needed him to play. He had a quality. I don't even want to say quality year for the Knicks, considering that the Knicks have had bad seasons all the way around over the last two decades. But Vonleh did come into his own with the Knicks and start to showcase some skills. Being with the Nuggets, he'll probably be a body that they throw out there periodically, especially with trying to overcome Mason Plumlee's injury. But with that said, though, I like Denver. Denver's a quality team, and they're going to be a very, very difficult out over the next couple of months. So let's see how this team tries to supplant their space in the top tier standings in the West. The Heat made huge moves. They've been trying to align themselves for 2021 free agency. The Heat, under Pat Riley's stewardship, have always been competitive. They're not going to be a tanking team. And when you don't have a championship team, but you're not tanking, you're always middle of the pack. So the Heat, over this past summer, made a big move in a sign and trade for Jimmy Butler and sending Josh Richardson to the Sixers. Jimmy Butler's fitting quite comfortably with the Heat. He's been able to be a big-time leader for that young team. Duncan Robinson, spot-up shooter. You got Tyler Hero, who's been able to, really showcase himself as a great shooter as well. Gordon Dragic coming off the bench has been a godsend for what the Heat need. And they've been able to overcome a lot of off-the-court issues with Dion Waiters. In trading for Jimmy, you set up leadership, but you want to clear as much cap space as possible to align yourself with Giannis Antetokounmpo, with the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes coming up. And trading for Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder, you really round yourself into shape as a playoff team this season. Miami is in fourth place right now. They're 35-15, but this is a team that is really surprising people. Nobody expected them to be so dominant so far. They've been able to get the most out of Bam Adebayo in year 3. He's an all-star. I mentioned Jimmy Butler, who's fit in as a leader. He's an all-star as well. So you have those core pieces, but you want to, put defenders around Jimmy who can take pressure off of Jimmy. Jimmy is a lockdown defender as well, but he's asked to be an offensive threat, not only as a scorer but as a playmaker. So you get in Jay Crowder, you protect Jimmy as well, and then you can use Andre Iguodala in situational basketball. Now, the Andre Iguodala saga in Memphis has finally come to an end. This is a player who comes from that Golden State Warrior tree in which he was a part of that 5 years straight going to the NBA Finals, putting in a lot of pain. He's a Finals MVP. He's defended LeBron. He's defended James Harden. He has the experience and pedigree that teams want on a championship caliber team. And getting traded to Memphis this summer, he never had intentions on playing for Memphis. although Memphis showed great potential, obviously, with Jaren Jackson last year and then drafting um, Ja Morant this year, who's arguably going to be Rookie of the Year. Now, Memphis is the ultimate surprise, especially out west. They're battling for a playoff spot. They're eighth in the West right now at 27 and 26. And um, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Dillon Brooks have been at the core of how this team has really just been able to get out and run. They're playing with tremendous energy. They're not backing down from any matchup. And I think that consistency is really boding well for their future. But Iguodala never had plans in the rebuild anyway, so he never intended on playing for the Grizzlies and didn't show up to any of their basketball activities. And he let management know that um, I'm willing to do any buyout. I'll let you know in regards to trading where I want to be. And it took a very, very long time for Memphis to get anything going with Iguodala because their asking price was so high. But in trading, and the Heat getting Iguodala and trading Jay Crowder, the Heat trade Justice Winslow to the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies also get a 2021 draft pick. They get Dion Waiters. Now Dion Waiters is waived, and being waived, he'll probably be on a lot of teams, especially playoff teams, radar. More information has come out in regards to the Lakers wanting to reach out to him and showing up their perimeter scoring to complement LeBron James. Now, in Waiters' defense, I don't even want to say defense, but in terms of how he would be utilized with LeBron, we have to go back to his first run with LeBron on Cleveland. Didn't necessarily work, but he was clashing with another young guard and Kyrie Irving, not necessarily personality-wise, but more or less style-wise. It was more or less a Kyrie and LeBron show, and Dion was the odd man out. Now with the Lakers and how they're utilizing LeBron right now, he's primary playmaker like he always is, but his scoring prowess isn't like it used to be. So you want to put as many perimeter scorers around him to protect LeBron from uh, having to utilize him as a go-to scorer all the time. Dion could help them, but I think that his attitude and how he's really changed the trajectory of his career and how he handles himself in Miami has truly, side with certain teams going away from him. He didn't necessarily buy into the Heat culture this season. They were going younger and trying to um, feature Tyler Hero. He didn't embrace the leadership role with that, and a number of suspensions have really prevented him from playing. But on a team like the Lakers, you have a great locker room presence. Things are already rolling, so you can see him kind of fit in as that type of role player, similar to what he did at OKC, and going to a team with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, and players like that. You kind of fall in line to the culture and you contribute to a winning situation. So hopefully he can do that. The Sixers made some moves. Now, when we speak about the Philadelphia 76ers, if you follow my page, you know that I'm a huge Sixer fan and I'm a huge Eagle fan. The 76ers this year have been severely underwhelming. They've really disappointed many who expected them to be a championship contender this year. They still maintain that talent level, but they haven't been cohesive at all this year. They've dealt with a number of injuries to Joel Embiid and Josh Richardson that have really thrown off their lineup on a consistent basis. But they still have Ben Simmons. They still have a player in Tobias Harris who got $180 million this past summer. You got Al Horford, who was brought in to be a leadership type of guy and to help space the floor for Ben, who struggles with shooting. But this team just has not been able to get it done on the road. They're 9-19 on the road compared to the best home record in the NBA at 25-2. So this is a team that really has to figure out how to win on the road if they're going to be anywhere near the championship expectations that many people bowled for them. In trading for Glenn Robinson and Alec Burks, you get some playmaking ability and some 3-and-D shooting. Alec Burks performed very well during his time with Golden State. He initially didn't intend to go to Golden State. He signed with Oklahoma City before they actually cleaned house and traded Russell Westbrook and Paul George, and he didn't agree to come to that Thunder team. So the Thunder let him out of his contract, and he went to the Warriors. Now, when he goes to the Warriors, Steph Curry breaks his wrist within the first 10 games. D'Angelo Russell is out periodically due to injuries or rest. So the Warriors weren't a team that wasn't full strength. So Alec and Glenn Robinson and Kine didn't really get to be in a winning situation. They competed at a high level, and now they're coming to Philadelphia to help Philadelphia finish games, defend, and it eliminates Philadelphia from having to play Mike Scott and James Ennis so much. I speak about James Ennis, knowing that Philadelphia traded James Ennis to Orlando, so they eliminate that issue. Ennis was a quality energy guy, but offensively he was severely limited. He couldn't really play with Ben Simmons on a consistent basis, and he just really didn't have as much value as Philadelphia would have wanted, especially over the last 2 years. So you get rid of Ennis and you bring in Glenn Robinson and Alec Burks. Let's see how they're able to contribute to the Sixers going forward over the next 28 games and into the playoffs. Now, the Clippers, they were the team that made the biggest move, knowing that they were already a top-tier team in the NBA, arguably the best, not record-wise, but more so from a well-rounded standpoint. They trade for Marcus Morris and Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas was waived, but the big move was Marcus Morris. Morris is a player coming from the Knicks, averaging 19.6 points per game. He's a hard-nosed defender, brings quality energy, just a hard-nosed, tough guy. But one of the things that the Clippers could truly utilize was Morris' ability to shoot. This season is considered a bit of an aberration, considering the fact that he's shooting close to 40% from three. Morris always a quality shooter, never afraid to shoot, but 40% is elite. Now, can he maintain that for the rest of the season and in the playoffs? We'll see. Playing on the Knicks, he got a lot of empty numbers, but he tried to the best of his ability to keep them competitive. You got to respect that. For the Knicks, they get Mo Harkless, and the Clippers get a 2020 first-round pick and a 2021 second-round pick. The Wizards received Jerome Robinson. We'll see what the Wizards do going forward. Hopefully, they can get John Wall back at 100% healthy. Wall's been a player who has been under huge duress considering the fact that he signed a Supermax, and due to injuries, he hasn't been able so far to live up to that Supermax contract. But the Wizards do have Bradley Beal, and their system so far this season has been just to score as much points as possible and not worry about defense. We'll see what the Wizards become next season with a healthy John Wall. Hopefully, Bradley Beal is still around to complement his backcourt mate, but the Wizards, they still have some work to do. A lot of talk has been made about Bradley Beal, as a matter of fact, because Beal, while being on a bad team like the Wizards, he's put up spectacular numbers all year round, and he is an all-star. He is a two-time all-star in his own right, so he does have name equity. But he was very upset that he didn't make the all-star team. And I'm of the opinion, while Bradley is a great player, he's a top 5 shooting guard in the league. I mentioned his ability to compete at a high level. He's averaging close to 29 points per game. You got to respect that. But he's on a losing team. And as Bradley wasn't a starter, he was going to be a reserve anyway. The coaches who picked the reserves are going to be more inclined to pick players that impact winning. While Bradley's trying to impact winning, they're not winning. They're not winning enough. So, he's going to be the odd man out. It's unfortunate because when you look at, the All-Star team, you look at the starters for LeBron, for Team LeBron, you got Anthony Davis, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Luka, and LeBron. In the reserves, you got Chris Paul, Dame, Jokic, Ben Simmons, Domantas Sabonis, Jason Tatum, and Westbrook. With Giannis's team, you have Giannis, Pascal. You got Pascal Siakam, Joel Embiid, Kemba Walker, Trae Young. On the bench, you got Bam Adebayo, Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Kyle Lowry, Chris Middleton. Out of all those players that probably shouldn't have been all-stars, you got to look to in my opinion, Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry's averaging 27, but he missed a number of games. And he missed 12 games. Pascal Siakam's also missed games, but Pascal was voted a starter. Considering the fact that Kyle Lowry missed so many games and the Raptors were still able to not only be relevant but be the second best team in the East, shows you the quality of their team. And while Kyle is a key part of their team, you got to look to Fred VanVleet as well as a reason for why they are second in the East at 40-14. So maybe if not Kyle, it would have been Fred VanVleet before it was Bradley Beal. Argument could be made that Beal is just in line with, the likes of Brandon Ingram, but you got to look at Ingram in the sense to say he made the All-Star team because of the element of surprise. Coming from Los Angeles in the fashion that he was playing, dealing with injuries, not really living up to being a top 3 pick, really not finding his niche under LeBron last year, and not really maximizing who many consider him to be the next KD, to come into this season with guns blazing, trying to really assert himself in New Orleans, especially dealing with Zion Williamson's injury. He averaged 25 points per game. Coaches respected that. New Orleans is, in 10th right now, but you had to respect the energy that Ingram was playing with. It's unfortunate that Beal is left out, and even Devin Booker. Devin Booker is a player who's a tremendous scorer. Many people expect that from him. He's a player who averaged 70 not average 70, but scored 70 at 22 years old. He's put up prolific numbers year in and year out throughout his career, but he hasn't surprised people yet. I think for a player of his offensive arsenal, many people expect him to win a lot more. Phoenix came out to start the season very competitive, but they fell off the wagon the last 2 months or so. So many people have become numb to what Devin Booker brings to the table for right now. I think eventually he will be an all-star, but you got to look at the West. The West is stacked at the guard position. You got Damian Lillard. You got Luka Doncic. You got Russell Westbrook. You got Donovan Mitchell. It's going to be very, very hard to be an all-star in the West. If you look at the West, who are you taking off? You can't take off Luka Doncic. Prior to these injuries, the last couple of weeks, he was premier MVP. He was premier MVP candidate. Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo with the Bucks being 46-7 and him averaging 30, 13, and 5. He is the MVP. But Luka definitely was in the conversation in the top 3. You got Damian Lillard, who's the last month and a half, 2 months, has really, done everything he can to will the Blazers back into the playoff conversation. They're 9th in the West right now, but you look at what Dame has done over the last 2 months. What can you say against him being an all-star? Plus, he's already made 4 all-star teams prior, so he has the name equity. Russell Westbrook, averaging 27, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. You're not going to knock off Russell Westbrook, who's a 9-time all-star. That's just the way it is. It's unfortunate for Devin, but it is what it is. I'm not so upset about those guys being left off. I'm more looking at Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, to me, should have been an all-star because while Kyrie Irving left, while Al Horford left, while I said Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, and Marcus Morris, 3 of those players left key contributors to what Boston had over the last couple of years. Jaylen Brown has come into his own, averaging over 20 points per game, shooting near 50%. He's living up to that $115 million contract he signed this summer, and he's a core reason why Boston is top 3 in the East at 37-16. So I thought he should have been an all-star this year, and if somebody was left off for the East, it probably could have been Chris Middleton. Middleton, while contributing to a team that's 46-7, he's missed a number of games, and they still were able to keep it rolling. A lot of that has to do with Giannis Antetokounmpo. But when you got a team that's 46-7 with the best record in the NBA, they're going to give you 2 all-stars. That's the way it is. But if I had a choice to who would be left off, I will go with Jaylen Brown. Obviously, we have to talk about All-Star Weekend and it being the first All-Star Weekend without the late, great Kobe Bryant. The NBA has done, and it will do tributes to Kobe And one of the in-game tributes that we will see will be the team having played regulation basketball through the first 3 quarters, and then whatever their number is plus 24. So the team coming in, say Team LeBron has 101 and Team Giannis has 95. Going into the fourth, they have to reach their number, whatever that number is, plus 24 before the opposition. So that's an honor to Kobe Bryant, who wore the number 24 the last 10 seasons of his career. Obviously, the NBA is dealing with that hardship, and not only the NBA, but fans around the world who miss Kobe Bryant and his impact on the game is boundless, and they can never truly be quantified right now because he had such a vast imprint on the game over the last 20 years. But in his honor, the NBA is trying to do the best they can, and I respect that. Once again, we want to send our prayers out to not only the Bryant family, but the other families affected in the tragedy going back to late January. I mentioned All-Star Weekend, the playoff picture, and the trade deadline. And speaking about the playoff picture, I mentioned the Bucks being 46-7. They're first in the East. Raptors 40-14, Celtics 37-16, Heat 35-15, 76ers 34-21, Pacers 31-23, Nets 24-28, and as we speak, they're up 11 on the Raptors with 40 seconds to play, so they're going to go to 25-28. And the Magic are 23-31. Out west, you got the Lakers 40-12, Nuggets 30-16, Clippers 37-17. Jazz 35-18, Rockets 34-20, Thunder 32-22, Mavs 32-22, and the Grizzlies 27-26. For me, in looking at both conferences, it's a 3-team race. You got the Lakers, who jumped out to an outstanding record due to a weak schedule to start. They were able to beat down on bottom feeders and really establish themselves early. At 40-12, they're probably going to run away with the West. But what I will say is that the Clippers are coming in to their own over the last couple of weeks, especially with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing together at the same time. They've only played together for 23 games, and the Clippers are 17-6. But to see how they are able to be consistent against every particular matchup, whether it be a premier matchup or a weak matchup, I think that they're the most well-rounded team. And adding Marcus Morris, you add toughness, you add shooting, and you add a scoring threat that can complement Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell after Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So I feel like the Clippers will probably be the best team coming down the stretch, but I think the Lakers' record, especially early, put them in a position to run away with the West. If the Clippers do make a move, though, they'll probably get within 2 games or so. The Nuggets are a team that are going to be forever under the radar. They don't necessarily have the star quality of a Clippers, Lakers, or even a Houston, but from a well-rounded standpoint, they have Nikola Jokic, who's a player who is a scorer when need be. He's a shooter when need be, but his primary impact comes from facilitating. So having a player like him facilitate at a high level and create for others, it completely throws off opposition, and the mismatches that he creates allows Denver to really run the gauntlet at team. So Denver being second in the West isn't a surprise considering they were second in the West last year. But the experience that they got last year can only bode better and improve them in those premier situations and going against great teams. Let's see how they finish the season. But I feel like the Clippers will catch them at the second seed. You got the Jazz and the Rockets battling for 4-5. Now, these teams are in the same tier for different reasons. You got Houston, who has star quality, but the consistency in terms of how they play really prevents them from being believable at times. You have James Harden, you have Russell Westbrook, who since December 7th everyone wants to talk about the turn of the new year, but it's really been since December 7th where Westbrook has truly taken off. You got over the last 25 games, the Rockets are 17-5 in games that, 17-9 in games that Westbrook has played in. He hasn't played in second half of back-to-backs, but Westbrook has been completely dominant. He's completely eradicated the three-point shot in his game, and it has helped his efficiency to rates that we haven't seen in his career. This is arguably the best stretch of his career outside of his MVP season 2017, of course. But he's averaging over 30 points. Like I said, they're 17-9 as a team in games that he's played, and he just completely dominated on a consistent basis. Now, the pushback to that is while he's doing so, James Harden is going through a tough stretch. Really hasn't really shot well this entire season, dealing with a number of injuries to his thigh. Really, when you consider how durable he's been over the last 9 years or so, that wear and tear does tend to get to you. But in terms of his style of play and how he gets shots, head coach Mike D'Antoni has given him complete autonomy in how he plays his game. But I think in terms of the self-correcting nature of how he plays, we haven't necessarily seen that so far this season. If he's making a step back, Houston is unstoppable. But it's too many stretches on a consistent basis where that step back has really kept the Thunder from not the Thunder, the Rockets, pardon me, have really prevented the Rockets from truly taking off to the level that many people would want them to, or what their expectations are. With that said, though, over the last couple of weeks, they've rounded into shape, and with this new small ball change and full commitment to small ball, let's see how they're able to finish the season over the next 28 games. You got the Jazz, who are all world consistent. They're going to be who they are. They lead with defense. They're led by Donovan Mitchell. You got Bogdan Bogdanovic there now, who's averaging 21 points per game. You got, Bojan Bogdanovic. That's the older brother. Bogdan Bogdanovic is the younger brother on the Kings. But Bojan's averaging 21 points per game. He's contributing and fitting extremely well after signing with them this summer. He's complementing what Joel Ingles already brought to the table. You got Rudy Gobert defensively inside. Royce O'Neal's been a great defender for them. You got Utah, who's going to provide fits for any opposition. I'm not sure that they're going to go past the second round, but if they go against Houston, watch out, Houston. It's going to be a tough matchup. It'll probably go 6 or 7, considering how Houston plays and how inconsistent they can be at times. You got a Utah team that can exploit that with great coaching and consistent execution. But then you got the firepower of Houston that can overcome a lot. So that particular matchup at 4-5 will be very, very interesting to see. Let's see how the final 28 games round out for them. You got the Thunder, who've been the ultimate surprise this season. I mentioned Memphis and how they've, exceeded expectations, especially being so young. You got the Thunder, who have exceeded expectations considering the fact that they've traded Paul George to the Clippers. You trade Russell Westbrook to Houston. You bring in an older CP who many people, while obviously lauding his generalship and his IQ for the game, his durability definitely gave people cause to pause. And many people didn't expect him to buy into this young Thunder team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dennis Schroeder, and many others. Obviously, Steven Adams being 25, but still being a vet, But Chris and his impact and how he's committed to winning and really complementing what Billy Donovan wanted all along from a point guard perspective. Obviously, Russell Westbrook being explosive, but very unpredictable in certain respects. You got Chris Paul, who's ultimately reliable at all times. He makes the right decision, and the players around him can probably grow at a different rate. I won't say they weren't growing on the Westbrook, but they're going to grow at a different rate. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a great mentee for a mentor in Chris Paul. So them being 32 and 22 in the 6th spot is a great barometer for what they could potentially be. We don't know if Chris Paul is going to be there for their foreseeable future, but he's going to finish out this year. And for him to perform at the level that he has, while not overexerting himself. He's allowing Schroeder and Shai Gilgeous to really carry, the majority of games at times, but he finishes. He's able to put players in position to get their best shots and execute what Billy needs. The Thunder are a great 6 seed, and at that 3-6, whether it's Clippers, Thunder, or if it's Clippers, Mavs, who come in at 7, or if it's Denver Mavs or Denver Thunder, that matchup is going to be tough all the way around. Now, the Mavs are 7, but they're dealing with an injury to the face of their franchise in Luka Doncic. Their complementary piece and Kristaps Porzingis has not really been able to round into shape to complement Luka on a consistent basis because he dealt with so many injuries. Luka's had 2 stints of ankle sprains that kept him out extended periods of time. So they're kind of backing into this All-Star break right now. But if Luka can come back healthy and put them in position to challenge for that 4-5 seed, I think they'll bode well against Houston. While Houston is young, every game the Mavericks have played Houston, Dallas has given Houston fits. And with Luka's mismatches, especially as a shooter, and having the size that he has at 6'8" at the point guard position, he's gonna really challenge this small ball lineup for Houston if that matchup comes to fruition. But at first, they must get Luka healthy if they're gonna have any chance of finishing out this season strong and getting a solidified position in the playoffs. Coming in number 8, 27 and 26 Grizzlies. I spoke about them at length. Ja Morant is running away with the Rookie of the Year discussion just for the fact that he's played every game and been dynamic. Obviously, you got Zion Williamson coming back over the last couple of weeks and, showcasing what he is as the number 1 pick, transcendent, dominant, all those things. But Ja has been all those things and more for a playoff team, and he's played every game. And he, along with Jaren Jackson Jr., who is an exceptional stretch 4 in this league, along with Dillon Brooks, who's coming to his own in year 3. This team is an upstart team that's going to be around for years to come. So for them to get this type of experience early, if they can sneak in the playoffs, just to get around them, when they play the Lakers or whoever comes in at number 1, for them to get that experience when nobody really expected them to do so is a great, great start. So much respect to Memphis in that regard. Out East, I mentioned, the Sixers coming in at 5. You got the Heat at number 4, Celtics at 3, Raptors at 2, Bucks at 1. The final 3, Magic, Nets, and Pacers, they're at that bottom tier. The first 5 that I mentioned have some inkling of championship expectations for this season. Bucks went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They want to get to the finals. You got the Raptors who won a championship last year. So for them to be defending champs in the fashion that they are and losing Kawhi to the Clippers, for them to be 40-14 dealing with all the injuries they've had, whether it be Larry, Van Vliet, Siakam, even Norman Powell, who's out an extended period of time. For them to be 40-14 shows you the quality of their organization and how, although they haven't been injured at the same time, they've been able to stand up and still compete at a high level. So you got a team like the Raptors who had prior to this loss to the Nets won 18 in a row, found a variety of ways to win. You got to give much respect to them. You got Boston, who to me is one of the most well-rounded teams in the NBA. They have great coaching and Brad Stevens. You got Kemba Walker, an exceptional leader, and you can see that in how Tatum and Brown have really come into their own cohesively. For a number of years, many people felt that they were getting in each other's way, similar to Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram. But to see Kemba come in and get the most out of those two together, you got Marcus Smart, you got Enes Kanter as well coming off the bench as a scorer. This is a team that they didn't make any moves at the All-Star break, but I think Danny Ainge wants to see what he can get out of this group, particularly, especially with Kemba as their leader as opposed to Kyrie. I think they're good. You got Miami and Philly battling that for that 4-5 seed. Now, Miami surprised many people for the majority of the season because they were in that 2-3 range. But the last couple of weeks, especially as the opposition has ramped up, and they're dealing with injuries to Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler now, they've fallen back and regressed to the mean. But to be a 4 seed, dealing with the changes that they've dealt with to maintain, I think Eric Spoelstra should get great consideration for Coach of the Year. So we'll see how that turns out. I spoke about Philly and how they've underwhelmed for the majority of the season, but their talent level puts them in a position to compete with anybody. And I think over the next 28 games, especially with a lot of the detractors that have come for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, I think competitively they'll respond. They're coming off of a big win against the Clippers at home nonetheless, but it's still a huge win. And Philly has knocked off some big teams at home. You got Boston, you got the Clippers, you got Denver, you got the Lakers. These are quality teams that the Sixers have shown they can defeat at home. Not to mention Milwaukee as well. So to have those quality of wins at home and to then go on the road and play down to competition many times, it's disheartening. But what I will say is hopefully the Sixers can get it together. For that bottom tier, you got the Pacers, you got the Nets, and you got the Magic. The Nets are just trying to really salvage anything they can, especially with the injuries to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant this season. But for them to be 24 and 28, they can get the most out of their team, hopefully. You got the Magic really trying to back in as well. They were a playoff team last year, but couldn't they can't necessarily find a way to get the most out of Aaron Gordon. While he's a quality player, I think his athletic prowess and his ability to really create off the dribble and shoot, he should probably be a lot better. But nevertheless, the Magic are H seed, so let's see what they do. The Pacers, though, another team that had to deal with a number of injuries, especially the Victor Oladipo, who missed half the season. Obviously, Malcolm Brogdon, their offseason acquisition, dealt with some injuries as well. The Pacers, outside of this past week or so where they've just blown a number of leads, they were in the conversation for a top 4 and 5 seed in the East as well. For them to be 6 and be 31 and 23, they actually just defeated the Bucks as we speak, so they're 32 and 23. Quality team, great coaching in Nate McMillan. They play hard. Domantas Sabonis is an all-star. So much respect to them. But I don't really see them being a true contender right now. They'll probably challenge a team in the East, especially in the first round, whether it'll be the Celtics or the Raptors, or maybe even Philly if they make a run. But I don't see them getting out of the first round. We'll see how the next 28 games go. With that said, let's see what teams outside of the 8 can try to make a run as well, make it difficult, become spoilers. We'll see how it goes. But I just wanted to tap in with you guys, especially at the halfway point of the season. All-Star Weekend's coming up, so make sure you tap into that. We'll be back with more coverage of everything from Skills Challenge to the Team USA versus World game. You got the All-Star game. Obviously, that's the premier main event. You got the Slam Dunk Contest, 3-point shootout. We'll cover all that coming up this weekend. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in, for tapping in. Hit a like, subscribe, leave a comment, all those good things. Let me know what you think, and I'll get back to you. This is Ask Isaiah Rhodes. See you with much more.